We made it happen.
We did it. We're live.
Look what I've got.
I had to move rooms. My son all of a sudden was at the door. Da, 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 da.
As they do. I'm doing it John Kim style. I'm just like in the garage. You might hear parrots. You might hear bikes going by. You know how he rolls.
Motorbikes and everything. I've done this with him where I'm like, what's in your background? Oh, one of those horrible bikes. Forget what those.
The assault bike, which is called assault for a reason. I hate it.
I don't like those things. Look, I like a good workout, but I do not like that thing.
I hate the assault bike. I'm with you. Well, it's a pleasure to see your face. I feel like I haven't seen you like one-on-one in a while.
The last time we saw each other was, and you were just in my town.
I was. We just got back from Vancouver. We got delayed. We literally landed at 1 a.m. last night.
Oh man, well, I'm so happy you're doing this. But yeah, I last time we saw each other was when you came on my pod, I think.
God, yeah. It was a while ago with our book.
Yeah, that's right. Right. That's right.
Wow. And now the shoe's on the other foot. We've got another co-created baby over here.
Oh my God, it feels, yeah, another co-create. So you guys are some of the only other couples that understand writing a book, what it does for your relationship?
Yeah, I don't know. I'd be curious to know what you think. I mean, before we get into the actual content, what was that like for you? Because we have an opinion, but I'm curious.
It was great.
Yeah.
I would say it was good preparation for having a kid because we had like two worlds, two lenses, two experiences, two creative styles.
Oh, I like that. Yeah.
Coming together. And so it was like very much like a child, you know, and so it was great that way. I think it was like we've learned a lot about each other through the process, which was super awesome. And then having conversations that we're having now have been because we're now revisiting all the things in the book and all the
you will continue to do at every stage of that little baby's growth.
Yeah, exactly. So that's been really cool. It's just as we talk about in the book, that these are habits and rituals and they're ways of being, not you get to this destination and growth is done. You don't have to do anymore. You're in the promised land. You know, Wouldn't that be nice? It's not.
Wouldn't that be nice? We just said the same thing this weekend on stage. Somebody asked us, and this is one of the things I love about you two, because similarly to us, we're always saying relationships are hard, y'all. Like, it's not that you get to this glorious end place and then you can just and be whatever forever. It's like, no, that is it. The relationship is actually the place where you get to take all of this stuff and put it into practice and be activated and get in there and dig and peel the layers. And people are scared of that. I don't know. I think it's great. I think it's exciting.
I agree with you. I think when you look, you're going to face relational challenges no matter what, like that's just life. So if you could start to turn towards the challenges from this place of introspection, then at least now the challenge is serving you. Otherwise, the challenge is just something you're going to avoid or you're going to repeat.
Yeah.
You're going to repeat it anyways. You know, so what do we say? We repeat what we don't repair or what we don't heal. And so I just think all of it is an opportunity, you know, to really step into our fullest self-expression, our fullest potential as a human, as a soul. And relationships are like, what an awesome thing that a person can walk along beside you and be like, hey, like, I love you. And I think you're capable of so much. And I see you kind of hiding here. And we have this friction here. Like, maybe we should heal that because I have that too. Yeah.
Do you feel like that's been something for you guys? Because I feel like clients struggle a lot with that. I mean, I sometimes struggle with that too. Like having my partner be the one that comes to me and says, hey, here's something that I've noticed, or here's something that I feel like you might want to lean into, or we could lean into. Do you feel like that is like central in your relationship where you're able to do that with each other? Like you're safe enough to do that with each other?
Yeah. One of the principles of our book actually is that when something's coming up for one of us, it's coming up for both of us.
That's right.
And so that for me is like, has been a baseline agreement of our relationship is like, if I'm sensing something, it's not invalidated because she's not. There's like, there's wisdom to the reactivity, the intuitive feeling, so there's curiosity, although sometimes there could be resistance to like, I don't know. But I think when we step back into that curious space of, okay, well, let's look at that. I think for us, that's been the fact that there's just a mutual agreement that we just are always going to grow.
Yes, that's it. It's like that commitment to growth it has to kind of trump everything, because you're not just growing individually, you're growing the thing that's bigger than you.
Right.
right? And so if you're both committed to that, then you're going to keep calling each other. And even if we get a little defensive, which I have a tendency to do, I've got a little bit of that, like, I've done something bad is coupled with I am bad, right? And it's like a forever journey. But I have to remind, it's like stepping out of that ego and saying, this isn't actually about me. This is about the thing that we're building, right?
That's hard. I'm with you. I feel like this is a defensiveness recovery conversation. I feel the same way.
You know, actually, that's a good lead in, because one of the parts that I love in the kind of in the beginning of the book, you all call them, what did I wrote this down, the emotional armor, right? Which is, it's defense mechanisms, right? So we talk about that from like either a Freudian or a Jungian perspective. And I like that you guys make them really accessible and like, here's the way that we armor up. But I would say what we're talking about, which is the like, I've done something bad, is I am bad. That's one of those, right?
Yeah, the shame. And we talk about that in emotional blind spots, shame, blame, all these different ways that we actually prevent ourselves from connecting to people. We carry this belief about ourselves. Like in that, I'm very similar to you. It's like if I get feedback and I get defensive, it's because I'm trying to protect this idea of a delicate sense of self. And so it actually doesn't allow me to be connected to Kylie or to whoever's giving me the feedback. I also don't get to hear the feedback. Like even in work, which is really interesting in workplace research, when someone says, can I give you some feedback? That statement actually causes in the research people, it causes their prefrontal cortex to shut down.
Yeah.
Even though it's supposed to be delivered in this, you know, eloquent Lululemon-esque kind of way, but yet we're still, you know.
Well, I know you talk about it in the book, but maybe, you know, just for the sake of people on right now, what are some of your strategies? Like I have my own personal strategies that I've slowly been adopting, testing, throwing something out, trying something new. But like, what do you reach for when you're in that moment where you're able to notice that you go into that defensive mode?
Yeah, so my immediate strategy is to ask, or is to first say, I can see some truth in what you're saying.
Even if you can't.
Well, usually, I would say almost always there's a truth to it. So that would be my first strategy, would be to like look for how can I continue the conversation or ask more questions. Like, tell me more about that. What do you mean about this if I don't understand it? And that allows me to witness my body going, but I'm still engaged in the conversation. And maybe it is saying like, hey, I just need a second to like pull away for a second just to process so I can come back and actually hear you.
Yeah.
And also to recognize, because it's through that ability to regulate in those conversations that we're able to actually discern when the feedback is actually not accurate. You know, otherwise, how do you do it unless you're able to reflect on who you actually are, how you actually show up? And that's only done through the recognition that everything that you're doing is actually in alignment with the way you want to show up.
Yeah.
So when someone says, you know, on the internet, you're a piece of shit, you're like, I'm actually not. Like, I actually know that.
Yeah.
And so it's like trolls, I always laugh because I think like for every wound you have, there is a troll farm that's specifically designed for that.
Uh-huh. Totally. Yeah. I'm wondering though, so this, I mean, it kind of leads into the codependency conversation, but when somebody, so here's a question I feel like I get a lot is when you have a dynamic in a relationship where one person is the one that tends to bring the things to the other person, right? And the other person is one that tends to feel like, oh, they're always just bringing me feedback, so it must be me. Like there's always something wrong with me. And many times with clients, right, I'll say, it's like, well, no, there's both people. It's just that you're the one that's probably sweeping things under the rug, not paying attention, right? Kind of doing more of that codependent dance. And so I know that that can be my MO, and I've had to really work on being the one to bring the thing to the table and say, actually, I have feedback too. It's not just when I get feedback come at me that I suddenly have feedback, right?
Yeah, it's so important that we recognize that even underlying the person who's the one who maybe brings it forward most, which doesn't always mean there's some sort of dysfunction, but I'd say they're probably more hypervigilant. Yeah. Like it's usually someone who's like the more of the surveyor as a kid, they were always monitoring the environment. They probably intuit people's needs really. And also, you know, if you look at it just from a gender perspective, women tend to be much more accurate barometers of relational health. Yeah. And that's because for women, a relationship being healthy actually has a physical safety element to it. So I remember Harriet Lerner saying that when I asked her why so many women study or are wanting to learn about relationship. And she said, well, it's because the subordinate group always needs to learn the needs and nuances of the dominant group.
That's right.
And that's across culture,
Yeah.
that's across everything.
Everything.
And I think, so coming back to the pattern you're talking about, usually when there's one person who's like, hey, there's this thing you're doing, or I noticed this, the other person, as you said, usually has the self-identification of, there's something wrong with me. Like,
Yeah.
I can never show up fully. I'm a bit of I've sort of resigned to things. And they don't even have to go get books because the other person's getting them for them. They don't have to go to book therapy because the other person books it. And so it's like, for one of us, we need to take a step back and allow space, but also what you were saying, and that allows the other person to have space to step into. From an attachment perspective, it's all similar. From a nervous system perspective, all similar. You know, it's all just different ways of systemizing human patterns.
Yeah, I find too, this idea of like overfunctioning, underfunctioning. What I've been really thinking about more and like working with relationally is this concept of like, we can overfunction in one area but underfunction in another, right?
Yeah.
So like, I overfunction in like the physical doing, like the taking care, but I underfunction in more of like the emotional, the conversations, bringing things to the table, and then he'll step in and overfunction in that way. And so that's also something that's a new dynamic that I'm paying attention to.
That's really interesting. I've not really explored the pockets of over and under functioning, but they're definitely, when you say about that, I'm like, oh yeah, that's probably true in that place. Versus also, like, Kai has more of a predisposition to like organization and structure, and I don't. And so I can tell that she needs, which I think about our childhood and our adaptive strategies. It makes sense that she requires more structure, and I actually don't like structure because I don't want to be in a box, so it's amazing how we partner.
That's it. That's it. I mean, it's amazing, and also so obvious, right? That like those are the two that go together so well.
It's such the greatest joke of the universe, I think, is like, hey, look, you got a thing that pisses you off. We're going to develop so that you have specific attraction to people who piss you off, so that you can heal the thing that brings it forward. It's a strange joke, but it's a cosmic joke.
It's a cosmic joke. I know, it's so true. Okay, I want to talk really quickly about codependency. Yeah. Obviously, this is what I'm going to talk about. It's like I can talk about it for days, right? So there's a question that came up. I was actually with Robin and them at Liberated Love.
Right on.
Not Liberated Love, geez, Real Love Ready, in Bloom this weekend. And one of the questions that came up, and then it came up when I put something on my feed saying, hey, ask us a question, is this idea of the difference between co-regulation and codependency, or where does codependency and co-regulation, like where do they intertwine? And I'm curious to know what your thoughts are on that.
Well, I would say that co-regulation that occurs with codependency is actually the attempt to create safety in a way that is not safe. So what I mean by that is, for someone who is generally what we might see as more of the codependent person, the dynamic is codependent, but I'm just talking about the lexicon that we use, is the person who more self-abandons, overfunctions, etc., is that person has an inability generally to self-regulate.
Yeah.
So they actually need to be in co-regulation in order to feel safe. So when I think about what is really healthy interacting relationally, is that the person has the ability to monitor and operate their own nervous system. And you think about someone who's more avoidant or distances themselves in relationship, they actually have a hard time co-regulating.
Yep.
So yeah, right. So there's this, when I think about codependency and co-regulation, I would say the healing of codependency is healthy co-regulation. And that requires the person who needs co-regulation to soothe, to learn how to self-soothe, and the person who needs distance and self-regulation actually needs to lean in. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So it's interesting. I love the overlay of the nervous system. Like in our book, we overlay the nervous system with attachment,
that part.
and how you need to, like, it just like through our own experience, somatic therapy, I think, and I mean, this is just true anyways, is that so much of our experience from a behavioral perspective actually was created pre-verbally. Yeah. So talk therapy is often it can get there, and we are co-regulating with the therapist. But I think when we actually go into the somatic sense, so for you watching, somatic being body, so it's like the body senses, it's a language that when I started to uncover it maybe 5 years ago, I was just like, oh wow, I'm resolving things. Like I was in the NICU for 10 days. So I had this like real fear of women leaving me. And it was like, oh, well, at the basis of that is like I was in an incubator for 10 days without connection to my mother from the moment I was born. Ah, okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
What do you
We
think?
we just had Peter Levine on Monday. We were talking a lot about that as well. And it's kind of the, you know, I don't want to say it's the next frontier, like it's new. Obviously somatic work is not new, but I do feel like we're finally as a people catching up to the idea that we can't talk our way into the full spectrum of healing, right? Like you can only get so far, and then you've got to be able to integrate because they're not separate. The body and the mind are one element, right? And if you're not working with both sides of the coin, you're only kind of working with half of your system, right? It doesn't make sense.
That's beautiful. I agree with you. I think it's obviously, as you're saying, not new, but it's becoming much more revolutionary in the sense of the common cultural conversation. And really, all healing is incomplete without the integration of the nervous system. And you look at how things like trauma and dysregulation relationally impact physiology and inflammation and autoimmune. Like the body can't heal if it's constantly in fight, flight, freeze, fawn. So you see all this overlap of what we might call codependency with people who are overfunctioning because they're exhausted, right? They're like constant. If your radar is on 24 hours a day, how do you heal? And so you see these like flaring ups of things. It's like my gut, it has so many issues, and it's like, yeah, we can. Obviously, there's environmental factors to all these things too. So I'm not negating that. It's confounding, but it's like we still need to get the body in a place where it is like, because if I'm in that state, then I can also listen. Then I'm also interested in connection, and I start to be able to trust myself. I have more access to my voice. You know, I think it's also that journey that we go from logistically understanding things to actually like getting back into the felt sense. Yeah.
I always say like you can know something and you can know something, right? It's a different kind of knowing when you like have that inner knowing in your body versus like knowing it in your mind. It's so fascinating too. Like for anybody listening, I mean, I would say like Mark and I can sit here, we can have these conversations, we can riff on this all day. We can both write books about this kind of stuff all day. And the lived experience of this stuff, right? Going back to what we were first saying about how relationships actually provide us that opportunity. I mean, y'all, I've been doing this personal work for 15, 18 years or something like that. And I just maybe 2 weeks ago sat with John on a couch in front of our intimacy coach. And I'm like uncovering all this new shit about this co-regulation journey. And I'm like sobbing. And all I'm saying is, I have always been the one in my life to have to pay attention for danger, to have to watch for what's happening. I'm fucking exhausted. I don't want to do it anymore. You know, like I want to know and to lean into the safety that you've got us. I don't want to be the one that's got us. And it's not even that he's telling me he doesn't. It's just that I don't trust it. Right. And so I offer that to say that you could be doing this work for 15 plus years and you can still be uncovering these new layers. Something's activated in the body that I hadn't been activated before. And wow, here I am, provided a whole other opportunity for like a different layer to work with, you know?
Yeah. You know, Kylie and I were working with a somatic therapist last week, and I've been working with one for a little while. And again, similar like new layers of things. Yeah, actually, what was really interesting is we were having a conflict about a thing, and the somatic therapist was like, "You're both talking about different things. Like you're fighting about this thing, but you're actually talking about two different things, and you think you're talking about the same thing. So you actually agree on the fundamental part, but there's disagreement or misalignment in these other smaller things." And I was like, and I had a similar sort of breakdown, you know, of like, it was guttural, the kind that comes from the body.
Yes.
It's like, I've been holding this for so long and I didn't know. And one thing that I recognized through somatic therapy was how so much of my ambivalence was really due to being in freeze, was due to being stuck. And so it was presenting as indecision, uncertainty, lack of direction, what do I do, confusion. But it was really below all that, I was frozen. And so the immobilization was showing up as these logistical things, which was really interesting. When I got to it, I was like, oh, wow. okay.
Oh my God. And it's so wild because you're like, I thought I knew this, right? We were just talking about this week. And I said,
Yeah.
we've got to look at this shit, right? This image of the spiral keeps coming up for me where I keep saying, like, how many times have you said it yourself, but also heard people be like, I thought I learned this. I thought I healed from this. I can't believe I'm here again, right? And it's like, I offer the idea of the spiral is like, it feels like you're continuing to go around the same thing over and over again. But every time you do, you're a little bit further out.
Amen.
Right.
Right.
Right?
Right.
And so it is different. You're seeing it from a different perspective. You've got a little bit more learning here or a little bit more body integration or whatever the thing might be. And so, no, you're not just doing it over again. There actually are layers.
That's beautiful. I remember talking to Sherry Salata, who used to be the producer for Oprah.
Yeah.
And I was saying to her, like, you know, everybody, like, what's the common thing that everybody, there's two parts to this. What's the common thing that every teacher teaches and you think is just like the connection? And she said, well, that you don't need them. And then she said, actually,
yeah, that's right.
You do need them to remind you that you don't.
Yes.
And this, which I was like, that's so true. It's like every teacher that I seek out or finds me somehow, you know, which I always love, the serendipitous nature of the universe, is like somehow getting me more free. And that's why we call it liberated love, because it's like, how do we get each other more free? And the second thing she said to me, which I was like, man, every time I feel like I learn something, I'm like, I think the layer of the onion is getting smaller, but it fucking stays the same size. And she said, maybe think about it instead that every layer that you figure out actually gets you bigger. Like you take up more space, your energy can flow more. And the other day I was interviewing Michael Beckwith.
Yeah. Oh, that's good. I love him. We're going to actually talk to him soon too.
Oh, great. He's so sweet. And he said, well, you know, a bad day for the ego is a good day for the soul. Ooh. And I thought, oh, that's so true. The human part of us is like, I fucked up, or I did it again, or I'm starting over. And it's like, there's no such thing as starting over. It's just like more pieces, more like figuring it out. Like if you really want to create a beautiful, powerful, expansive relationship, everything that's required to do that, the relationship is serving up the material to work on, as you guys know very well.
Yeah. Yeah, we got to keep doing it, y'all. Like, we got to keep leaning into it. Part of it is just like, I really believe so much of our relational work is in this idea of like expanding our tolerance for this discomfort, right? So that we don't shut down whatever the learning is so quickly because we're so scared of the discomfort. It's like, no, that's it. That's the juice. That's where it is. Like, lean in, get comfortable, you know, get excited about it, which people think I'm crazy, but I'm like, ooh, anger. This is great. Ooh, activation. I love this. People are like, you're nuts.
I agree with you. I think there's something so powerful about orienting to what's going on for us in that way. And I have a thought that I don't need it verified by research. I'm almost certain that it's true. Yeah. Which is that we try to save other people from the feelings we don't know yet the value of. So like, you know, the value of activation, you know, the value of grief, you know, the value of anger. So you're not like, oh, shut that down, shut that shit off, there's something wrong with you. It's like, oh, there's actually something brilliant about what's coming up for you. Let's actually explore the brilliance. That's why triggers, we have a section in the book where we talk about triggers, like trusting the triggers, because triggers are just a radar. And it's like, really how healthy relationships are built are not through an avoidance of triggers. It's through how we orient to the reactivity. And we talk about good triggers, like this idea of like vulnerability can be a trigger. Yeah. Trust can be a trigger. Openness can be a trigger. Reliability can be a trigger, which is like, who knew that would happen?
Big one. Yeah. Especially for somebody who might be a little bit more of an avoidant, like actually relying on somebody or the trusting in somebody. I mean, that's like where all the ick is for me. So
ick. I love it.
The ick runs deep.
Yeah. Well, you know, this, sorry, go on.
No, go ahead.
No, please.
No, please.
Please.
I was just going to go like this again.
Well, I'm excited for everyone to read it. It comes out tomorrow. So excited. Audio book, actually, Kylie and I recorded conversations after each chapter to discuss the chapter, unscripted, like just jam.
I love that.
And so if you're an audiobook listener, it's definitely a treat. I'm an audiobook person, so I was like, we got to do something special for audio. But the book, I loved writing it. I mean, we loved writing it, but I'm speaking for myself right now. But what I do know is if you read this book and you put into practice the tools and the things that it tells you the how,
Yeah.
you will completely change your relationships in your life. Like that's not a thought. I'm like, it's fact. I'm positive because I know these tools work for thousands and thousands of people I've worked with, and also for Kylie and I, we're living them.
Yeah. Well, that's what I love about both of you and the way that you speak to this, right? Is it's not just the concept, it's the like tangible, okay, now here's what to do with the concept and here's how to actually put it into practice. And that, I think there's an art form to be able to go into both, right? The theory and the practice. And you both do it so beautifully in this. And it's so well written. And I'm really excited to be able to share it. And please give Kylie my love. I want to reach out to her too and give her a big congrats.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you having us on, or having me on, and I look forward to more conversations. We got to do a like group event with John and you and Kai and I. I think that'd be a lot of fun.
Come to LA, man. Come to LA. It's so the
we shall. With a kid, it's been harder to do any trips.
Don't
you know?
tell me, I know.
You know what I mean?
I do.
So it's like book launch time, and it's like, where are we gonna fly? Like nowhere. That's
I get it.
I'll fly.
I was writing my book when my baby was like 7-8 months old. So I was like writing my part and then running and pumping or breastfeeding and then writing my part and then going to breastfeed. Like it was, I get it.
I don't know how you did it.
Sylvie, look at Sylvie just popped in. She said, yes, LA.
Sylvie's in Austin though.
I know, but she even said yes, LA. We got it. Come on, Sylvie.
Thank God for virtual events. Yeah. Well, thank you so much. Appreciate it. Sylvie, we love you too.
We love you, Sylvie.
Thanks so much. Appreciate you.
I'll see you soon.
Sounds good. See ya.
Bye.